You're listening to Honey, We Made a Disney Podcast. Two friends, since the scariest thing in the world was a Furby going off in the middle of the night unprovoked, now guides on your nostalgic tour of Disney history, one magical film at a time. I'm JB Waggoner.
And I'm Eddie Ferguson. And on today's episode, we risk getting canceled as we review The Song of the South.
So fasten that safety restraint and pull up on the yellow strap. It's time to open the vault.
Cue that Disneyest sound effect.
Perfect timing for us to be talking about the vault, Eddie, because the movie we are talking about today has yet to be released from the vault since the re-release in the 80s. I think 1986 was the last time this thing saw the light of day. It did, I think, make it overseas. Like, I think it ended up on VHS or something in other countries, but here it did not. Eddie, we're talking about the movie my wife first went searching for on Disney Plus when Disney Plus came out in 2019 to see if they would do it. Song of the South.
Arguably the movie deepest in the vault.
Oh, by far. Are there other movies that haven't come out of the vault?
I think there's a handful of like shorts and different things like that. Some of the propaganda films and stuff that they've from the war that they're trying to strike.
That's right.
But, I mean, this is like Bellatrix Lestrange's vault deep within Gringotts.
That's a
deep.
good. I like the parallel pulling from Harry Potter for this.
Do you like that? Yeah. I mean, we almost had a Harry Potter Disney connection there, but that's a story for another time. Yeah, this is the movie Disney wants to act like they never made.
Never happened.
But what's really interesting, I guess we can jump right in this one, is from what I've read, it sounds like that was the case even before they started making this movie. That the controversy surrounding this started in production.
Pre-production, when they were writing it.
Pre-production, yeah. And so it like, as I'm reading through all this, as I'm watching it, because spoiler alert, JB and I found, well, actually, I don't know why this is spoiler. I literally just got on YouTube and typed Song of the South full movie, and this is the playlist that I found.
It was a playlist. It wasn't like one video.
JB.
Yeah, it was like multiple videos all in a long row.
But you click play all and it plays like a movie on YouTube, you know? And I'm like, quick, JP, watch this before Disney finds it and takes it down. But I mean, it stayed up for a while, so I'm sure it's still there. Yeah, so like as I'm watching this, as I'm reading and researching everything, it's still like, how did this movie get made? Like, why? And like, why? Why is it this is the story that you want to bring, you know, the studio back? What am I trying to say there? You know, it's just kind of like,
right. Yeah. So
it's a perplexing situation.
So the history a little bit behind this is around this time is when Disney is doing the propaganda films. They're trying to stay afloat during World War II. At the same time, movies like Gone with the Wind are coming out and being a massive success. That time period in American history is really working well at the box office. And so Disney starts looking for something that they can do that's in that same realm. And this story that was evidently a favorite of Walt Disney, the Uncle Remus stories by Joel Chandler Harris, that's what he latches onto, is something he would read as a kid, I guess, had some history with it. And so they got a copy of it, and then they started working on it even in like in 1944. It took several years for this thing to get made. It's coming right off the animator's strike. So his next first film is, hey, you can tell even from the 3 films that they've released during this time, with Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros, that like they're not doing full animation films. They're doing kind of a hybrid between the two, and that could have been from some of that animosity from his time with the animator strike. Yeah. So he chooses this.
So this gets billed as the first live action musical drama from Walt Disney, which is, again, very interesting. We've talked about this with the previous two films that we've looked at. And I think, again, here we see this constant interest with the blending of live action and animation. This one has much more of just kind of these animated vignettes, but there's these brief little moments where they play around with a live action and animated character sharing the screen. Not as strong as, what we'll see here in about a decade, but still nonetheless, like you see them trying to figure this out.
Yeah. You can see the jump that's made even between this and Saludos Amigos and some of those animated sequences, where they do make a little bit of a jump here. But the story that this is based off of, the stories from Uncle Remus, was written by a white author, Joel Chandler Harris, who has many ties to the Confederacy, writing for the Confederate Papers. And he basically cobbled together stories from his time on plantations, listening to black slaves telling stories, is the way that he tells it. The reason we can't really corroborate anything that he wrote was because he didn't give any of them credit to the people who actually were telling him these stories. So he basically took their stories, popularized them, and made money, and that's like wave surge of people reading them and loving them. And he gives no credit to the original people who made them. He doesn't reach out to it. Like, there's no sign that he actually did anything to, like, hey, I didn't come up with these stories. Other people came up with them. Oh, and by the way, they were slaves and had no rights, and all of these like major problems. So right out of the gate, this is already the source material before a word is written onto the screen. It's already a problem. Like, what's going on with this and what it is, even before they get started.
Yeah, and they know that this is problematic because they reach out and they bring in a couple of consultants to try and kind of like help them navigate this whole process.
Soften it a little bit.
Yeah, like soften it. So you're kind of looking at it going, I mean, you got to bring in consultants to be able to walk this tightrope. I don't know, like there's just this part of me, and it's not even like what I know now. I'm just thinking from like a creative standpoint. You've just got to be able to stop and go, is this really the story we want to tell when it's already this difficult to just put it on paper and get the storyboards out and everything like that? There's got to be these moments. But they bring in a screenwriter that this is the only screenplay he's ever done. The issues are right out from the top of, you've got a rather demeaning portrayal of African Americans in post-Civil War period in the South, what is commonly referred to as like the antebellum South. And it's definitely at a time where in post-World War II, there's this renewed push to try and see some, equal rights between blacks and whites in the United States. And people are looking at this going, hold on, we just made some huge progress through the war. This feels like a really big step back. And it's already problematic in the source material. So when they bring in the consultant and he starts, hey, maybe we should try this, maybe we should do that, they don't follow any of those things.
No. Yeah. I don't even think he makes it through the rewrites and production. He just like is gone not too long after that. So watching,
to hold up the movie on its own, let's just let's strip away all of the kind of the noise that surrounds this movie in general, and just kind of, what is the film? Like, I had never seen this before. Had you?
I had only ever seen the same sequence. That's the most famous sequence of the colors, and he's singing Zippity-Doo-Dah. And he's playing with the birds and stuff like that. That's all I had ever seen. I don't even remember. I have vague memories of it being taped either off TV or something, because they took animated moments from this and re-aired those. But yeah, I had no clue about the rest of the film.
So oddly enough, my wife, Sarah, was very familiar with this. Her aunt had a VHS copy of The Song of the South, and it was the only like kids movie that her aunt had. So anytime that they would go and visit their aunt, this was like the movie that they would watch.
Okay.
And so she was very intrigued, like, oh, you guys are watching that or whatever. And her like striking memory, which I would say holds up, as she was just like, it's really kind of boring, isn't it? It's like, yeah, like that was just kind of my overarching feeling as I was watching this, of going like, hey, just set all the controversial stuff aside. Like, who are the characters? What's the story? What's going on there? And it's just like, it's a very boring story, like uncharacteristically for Disney. Like, typically you get something that's compelling here, like something that kind of pulls you along. But outside of some catchy tunes, I mean, for me, like, it's just it's a very odd story.
Until the very end, where he gets like attacked, until he gets little Johnny gets attacked by a bull and is like on his, not deathbed, but like in bed, like trying to recover. Will he make it? Will he not? Like, and the dad
did he have a concussion?
Yeah, something happened. And then he's like, he's not asking for his dad, they've finally come home, but asking for Uncle Remus for the last time. Like, yeah. And then they fly.
Not asking for dad, who he's been asking for all the way up until this moment. The entire film.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's an odd premise, because they don't give us what is the you're left to kind of piece things together on your own. It opens with this carriage ride. Dad, yeah, and it's like, well, people are unhappy with what I'm writing, or the kid finds out or whatever, and it's like
some marital
mom
issues.
And dad mad at each other. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Well, we're just gonna drop Johnny off at his grandma's plantation, and the mom's not okay with that. So, well, I got to stay with Johnny. Well, then this is goodbye. I've got to get back to Atlanta, and you're just like, you don't get it, like you don't understand why this conflict is coming about. Like, one line of dialogue could have maybe helped a little bit. Like, just tell me why.
Tell me why.
Tell me why.
Exactly. Great time for a reference.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So, you're just kind of left from the beginning going, okay, why is he here? Why is he?
What is going on?
Go through all of this? Yeah, what's going on?
What is the purpose of this thing even existing? Yeah, exactly.
So he meets Uncle Remus. Johnny does, and I would agree. One of the things I read, one of the controversies around this is you don't fully understand what period of the South this is in. Is this pre or post Civil War? Are these slaves or are these free people?
The one way you get some sort of a indication is one of the songs. They're talking about they're in the fields, and they are talking about how they don't they don't have anywhere to go. This has always felt like home. And that's kind of an allusion to the fact that they have been freed, but they are still working on the farm that they were previously enslaved at, because this is the only home that they've ever known. And that theme is almost throughout this entire thing, really weirdly, where everybody's like the most poignant moment, or even in Brer Rabbit, the first parable or the first that we get is he leaves home and he gets caught up, and then the moral of the story is he runs straight back home to be back safe in the briar patch. But even Uncle Remus has some really odd statements about like looking longingly and being like, and if you don't mind me saying so, I miss the way it was. It was better all around, the way it used to be. It's like, wait, when you were a slave, like you miss that era of it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest critiques of this film is its dreamlike idealizing what the previous era used to be before emancipation and all of this. Like it's so like that when that moment happens, even before we get to Zippity Doo Dah, they're like right next to each other. I'm already like, wait, what? What's going on here? And then it goes into the fairyland. It's like it's already feeling jacked up to me before we even get into it.
Yeah, the story just has holes in it. It leaves you kind of squinting and leaning in. I don't know how else to like describe that emotion of going, did I hear that right? What's going on? Like, so it doesn't draw you in. Plus, I mean, you've got young actors who are not good at all. Like, and nothing pulls you out of a movie worse than, really bad child actors. So you've got a lot of that kind of going on in there. The animated sequences are okay. I don't think that there's anything spectacular there where you're seeing some incredible art direction or change, some new advancement in animation.
Basic,
At least not to my eye. I would have to say the best thing about this movie is the song Zippity Doo Dah, which makes it went on to win the Academy Award for best song. It is really, really crazy. The actor who plays Uncle Remus, James Baskett, this was his final film role. He goes on and wins an honorary Academy Award for the role. When exactly, I couldn't ascertain, but like it is, like Zippity Doo Dah. If you were to just pull it out of this movie, pull it out of the story, which is what Disney's done for the past 30 years, and just kind of let it sit on its own, it does, and it works just fine. And you just like, let's pretend that this was not a part of this other thing,
Man, yeah.
And it makes it a fun, zippy little tune.
It's been stuck in my head all day since I've watched the video.
Me too.
It really does. It's if you think of just the term earworm, it is the first thing I think of because it just will not leave no matter what you do. And I'm afraid of how long it's going to sit in my brain again after I thought I had just gotten it out of there.
Then I just said it 3 times in a row. Now it's right back in there. So,
yep.
Yeah, I guess for me, like I finished watching this going, okay, I can definitely see where all the controversy comes from and why this is, not one that Disney wants to put on the homepage of Disney Plus. But I also was like, it's not a good movie. Like I just don't. Like, does that make sense? Like, you're just kind of, okay.
It's bad politically, and it's also really bad, just like storytelling and writing. And it's not worth watching again. Like I'm not mad that it's not pulled out. Oh, we need to pull this out and make sure we don't forget. It's like, no, we can forget about this film. This film sucks. This film sucks.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that because that was definitely. I mean, my overarching theory is, hey, the way things were the way things were, and for us to try and go back in time and try and erase that or act like that's just not how things were perceived. I actually think that does us a disservice. Like, it doesn't help us learn and have empathy and to understand other people better now. Like, hopefully we're learning and we're understanding of each other better. I think in many ways we aren't. We're not as empathetic. We're not as understanding. It's because we're so quick to judge and demonize people in the past. And like, there's a part of me that's like, just put it up on Disney Plus. Just put it there, and I think it'll stand on its own. I think it'll serve as like a better lesson of like, yeah, bad representation is bad representation, and the story's not good. So it also shows like, when you don't present good characters, it's a bad story. Like, when you don't represent people well, it's not a good story and it's not going to hold up. And in many ways, I feel like Disney's now suffering the opposite direction of like trying to be overly sensitive about everything. And like, well, you're not representing who human beings are. And so your characters are weak and your stories are weak. Like, in many ways, I see a lot of parallels between both of these where I'm going, you know what, just put it all out there and just let people learn from it, you know? Like,
it's funny how glossy this film is. It's so idealized, and it does a disservice to the real nature of what people were going through at the time. It's in no way, shape, or form any reality whatsoever. It's almost silly. It's nature, and
it's weird. It has these eeriness at times where you're going.
Even when in the opening scene with the African American lady, she has the unintentionally creepiest forced smile on her face,
riding in that carriage
the entire time, and it's so awkward. Like I'm just like, ma'am, your face must really hurt right now with how hard you were smiling.
Yeah, and there's several other moments in this film where you just kind of feel that that imbalance, that inequality, but it's also glossed over. Like, we're switching certain words out for other words. We're not really saying this, but we mean that, you know. And I don't know. I watched it going, I know exactly what's going on here. You know what? This is odd. This is weird.
Interesting enough, this film was the only film that Disney came out with that had a lead character of color, from like African American color, from all the way up until the 2000s when Princess and the Frog came out. It's crazy that there was none other in that entire time of their history until the 2000s. What was that? 2008, 2007? Like that was when we were in college, right?
I think Princess and the Frog came out in 2009, 2000. Yeah.
And Uncle Remus was it. He was the only major black character.
And that is the baffling part. Like, it's one thing to try and hide this movie, put it back in the vault or whatever, but it's like, you didn't make any attempts to try and tell a better story.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like that. And I mean, we're kind of jumping, I guess, but you're making the connection there to Princess and the Frog. We love Princess and the Frog. I mean, it is on regular viewing at our house. And I think it is a great representation and a wonderful, wonderful story, amazing characters, where you're going, why did it take you that long to tell a story like that?
It's a great time here to talk about it, because we're coming to your favorite part of our show, which is how the film impacted the parks. And these two films, again, heavily married, especially in its future of specifically Splash Mountain.
I guess that is another area of this whole thing that just like baffles me. It is covered in controversy during its creation, So I'm just the whole time I'm watching, researching, I'm going, why didn't anybody just pull the plug? Like,
yeah,
you couldn't see that one coming. Like,
they've released this four other times in the 50s, 70s, twice in the 80s, up into 86. They were proud enough to put it into theaters again.
This movie, I had the number. Let me see if I can find it again a little bit. So they made the movie for just a little over $2 million. In its initial run, it makes $65 million. Over its other releases, it garners $300 million, just over $300 million. So, yeah, like as much as Disney wants to act like they're ashamed of this, like they still milked it to make some money off of this thing,
They did.
So it has all this controversy. Then, like in the 80s is when they're seeing the writing on the wall of like, we need to pull this. We need to just act like we didn't really.
I mean, it might not be until the 90s because they were still releasing it in in 86. They came out. They did Splash Mountain in 83.
Yes. So my understanding is that they like by 89, 92 is when they
90s
start pulling it back. Yeah. So into the 80s early.
After they made Splash Mountain.
After. Yeah. So that's what I'm getting at. It's like going. So Splash Mountain opens in 89 in Disneyland.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought it was 83. There you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, like 86 is, they're in development. So in other words, they're making the decision to not release this movie anymore, to like pull it back. But meanwhile, make a ride somewhat based off of this. Like, it's not a Song of the South ride per se. It is a zippity doo-dah Briar Rabbit.
Yeah.
If you've ever been on it, you understand. But still, nonetheless, you're going, really? Like, you're going ahead and you're making this. It shows you that, like, we talk about Disney as a company. It's really not. Like, it is a true conglomerate where you've got 10 different companies all under the Disney name, and they're really not talking to each other. They're really not cooperating or working with each other. And no better example than all of this. So you get, so you can get on, I highly recommend, there's a show on Disney Plus called Behind the Attraction. If you're at all a Disney Parks fan, worth the watch. I feel like it's that old, like early 2000s Discovery Channel, Travel Channel type of style of explaining things. You know what I'm talking about? This Behind the Attraction. They have one all about Splash Mountain that it really tells this really well. But the long story short, Disney for the longest time said, we need a log flume ride. They can't just buy one off the shelf and put it into Disneyland. They've got to come up with Splash Mountain. Tony Baxter comes up with this incredible ride, animatronics all over the place. And it's a huge hit right off the bat. So much so that it opens in July of 1989, and they immediately turn around and not just build one, but they build two more. October 1st of 92, it opens in Tokyo Disneyland, and October 2nd of 92, it opens up the Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World. And it is beloved. Like, it is one of, it's one of the three mountains. You have Space Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain, and you have Splash Mountain, or at least you did. And it's kind of become the thing, it's a part of what you have to do when you go to Disney, a Disney park and everything. But of course, again, they went ahead and made something based off of a highly controversial IP. It's never set well with people, and it's always been kind of this lingering thing. And so much so that I think it was in 2019, 2020, Disney finally announced that they are retheming 2 out of the 3, the ones that they actually control, Disneyland and then the Magic Kingdom one at Walt Disney World, to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which both open in late 2024, not too far off.
Next year.
But there's no plans to do anything to the Tokyo Disneyland one.
And you mentioned something about the fact that they actually own or run. What's the deal behind that?
Say that again.
You said the other two they actually own or control, but the Tokyo one they don't control?
No. So Tokyo Disneyland, Tokyo Disney Sea is owned completely by the Oriental Land Company. And they just license all things Disney from Disney. They pay a pretty hefty licensing fee. And then they pay Imagineering to build everything. That's also why Tokyo traditionally has always had the best rides, top of the line animatronics. They say those are the two best parks out of the 12 Disney parks because the Oriental Land Company has an unlimited budget. And so money is never an option. And so when Walt Disney Imagineering goes to build something there, they have no restrictions. So if you watch some of the ride-throughs of like Pooh's Honey Hunt there, or the new Beauty and the Beast ride, or just look at Tokyo Disney Sea, like the videos and stuff of that park, anybody who goes there says, hands down, best Disney park in the world is Tokyo Disney Sea. It's on my bucket list to go visit. But otherwise, I just got to live vicariously through YouTube videos.
Which we can do all the time anyways.
Which we can do all the time. So yeah, like this is, this movie has had a pretty huge presence in the Disney parks, from Zippy's Doodah being played at everything. It was in all of the background music. It has now been struck. You do not hear it. People have even said, from like the background music at the promenade as you're walking into Disneyland, like no longer were you going to hear that. But before, like the song was everywhere. And even kind of like Briar Rabbit, Briar Fox, and Briar Bear, those three, were at a time walk around characters. Those were characters you could meet in Disneyland. Or you could see them in a parade or something like that. So as much as this film from its get-go has had this swirl of controversy, it's also had a strong song in Zippity Doodah and some intriguing characters in the three Briar, Rabbit, Fox, and Bear. And Disney's gone like, hey, you know what? We made $300 million off of this. Somebody's got to love us.
Somebody's got to love us. That's been their mantra for a long time. Y'all remember Walt, right? Walt liked this, so you should like this too.
You should like this too.
Well, Eddie, what we're gonna, I mean, it's pretty obvious for me what the rating is for this is gonna be. We're gonna, at least for me, I'm gonna gently push this, maybe shove this back. This might be a shove back into the vault. I have no desire to revisit this at all.
I mean, we say back in the vault because assuming that it is out of it and it needs to go back into it, but
it's into
already
the vault.
In there. Like it's just we snuck in.
We snuck in to check it out. We got
Grip Hook to sneak us in and get us in. Just to bring us full circle on that one. I would say it just needs, should stay right where it's at. Like it's just not even a good story, controversy aside. Then you put all of that on top of it and you're like, yeah, you shouldn't have even made this in the first place.
Just keep on doubling down on it like they double down on all their remakes. But
yeah, wouldn't that be hilarious if they were like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make a live action remake of Song of the South.
Whatever.
But I'm there with you. Stay in the vault. Leave it there.
Stay in the freaking vault. But now that we are filled up on nostalgia, let's talk about a little bit of Disney news. And if you are a fan of the show, listener of the show, you know that during most of the pandemic, we were so sad about the fact that they didn't bring any Pixar movies to theaters. We wanted them in theaters. We needed to enjoy our Pixar film in theaters, and they didn't for a long time, all up until Lightyear came out in 2022. But now they're rectifying this. Eddie, you let me know that I can now go relive Soul as well as Luca and Turning Red in theaters. They're bringing them, all three of those, the pandemic movies. Or do they have a name for this trio of films? But now we can actually go back to theaters and watch them and enjoy them.
Yeah, I don't know if they're rolling this in as part of like the Disney 100 or if this is just kind of a standalone thing. But January, you can go see Soul. February, you can go see Turning Red. And then March, you can go see Luca. So if you're all looking for JB in January, he'll be camped out at his local AMC watching Soul on the big screen over and over.
Because if I hated it while watching it in the comfort of my own home, I'm going to love it on the big screen. Just love seeing it in all of its glory. Is it your
least favorite Pixar movie?
Man, I don't.
That's a big, I don't know.
Bad question. The bad dinosaur. Good dinosaur is pretty awful. Yeah, this one, I have so many problems with the ending, with where I know that you loved it and now just mostly love it.
It was definitely a high when I first watched it, and then it's just kind of slowly come down where you're like, oh yeah, that didn't hold up. I wonder if it was a bit of just kind of, I was just getting over COVID, it was 2020. It was just kind of a weird time for us all. So
Luca
I'll blame it on
is
that.
the one. Luca is the one that I may consider going back to theaters because I still haven't gotten to fully experience that one, and I think that one would be really beautiful.
Luca may be it's definitely my top 10, maybe my top 5 Pixar movies. I really, really love Luca. I think it is a fantastic story. It's so simple and straightforward, but yet kind of crazy and creative and out there, and such identifiable characters. You feel a little bit of yourself in all three of the main characters. I love Luca. So I hope it comes out here and I will get a chance to go see it in the big screen. It'll probably won't.
Also in Disney news, Iger decided to open his mouth again.
Did a little interview.
did an interview that I don't know if it went how it really went, but you watched the whole thing.
I watched both. He said some
things.
So the New York Times did this big event where they had several different CEOs, and they did kind of a long form interview, I would say, live on stage. I think they were averaged about 22 to 30 minutes each of these. Same interviewer did all of these different interviewers. I'm sure by now all of you have heard the quotes from Elon Musk coming out of that one. But it was preceded by an interview with none other than Bob Iger of the Walt Disney Company, to which he was asked a broad range of questions, one of which he threw some pretty heavy shade at Elon Musk from the stage. So that's why when Elon comes up and said what he said, which I won't repeat because we are a family-friendly podcast, he directs it right at Bob Iger.
Did he say he literally, hey Bob or something?
He says it twice and then he goes, "Hey Bob, if you're still out there," he was not mixing his words whatsoever. It was very clear his feelings and his thoughts on it. Which, side note, has subsequently started this kind of not a huge backlash, but a significant amount of backlash of just kind of ultra X users, like Go Elon, they're all now boycotting Disney because of Bob Iger. And I mean, you all know our feelings on boycotts and all of that fun stuff. But prior to that, they began one of my favorite moments of the interview. And if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. The interviewer reads aloud to Bob Iger a rather famous quote from Walt Disney himself. And the quote, and many of you may have heard it, where you can't top pigs with pigs. I don't know if you're familiar with this quote, where Disney is asked why he doesn't do sequels. And at the time it was having to do, he was the only time he'd ever done a sequel was for the Three Little Pigs. Three Little Pigs was a huge success. So everybody's pushing him. You got to do more Three Little Pigs. You got to do more pigs. And they do it and it bombs. It's terrible. And so after the success of Mary Poppins, they're like trying to get him to do more Mary Poppins. And he says, we've learned you can't top pigs with pigs. This interviewer, this journalist reads this to Bob Iger, and you just feel the awkwardness of it all because, I mean, more or less, like, this is what Iger has put all the chips on. Like, they have made a lot of money in his tenure on remaking everything, doing sequels to everything or remaking everything. The emphasis has not been as much on original ideas. It's been kind of rehashing all of that. So there's this really wonderful, awkward moment in all of the midst of this. Then he really steps in it because they push to the Marvels, the worst MCU release ever. And I'll let you pick it up from here and describe.
No, you go for it.
His answer as to why the Marvels failed.
No, you go. You're. I don't want to step on your train. You keep going, man.
So what Iger says, the reason why the Marvels failed is because of the different restrictions and stuff post COVID and whatnot. There weren't enough studio executives on set overseeing the process. This is what he says live in the interview. That's the reason why the Marvels drifted and wasn't very good, is because they didn't have enough executives on set to oversee the process.
What's funny is
the world reacted.
What's funny is I wouldn't even say that the Marvels is the worst of the movies of theirs I've even seen of MCU films. Like, there's other MCU films I would rather not watch quicker, if that makes sense. Like, least want to watch, with Thor, the latest Thor movie being right up there. Yeah. Love and Thunder being one of the top worst that I've experienced. Eternals, another one, utterly forgettable.
I still haven't seen Eternals.
Anyways, when he says that his number one priority at Disney right now is turning around Marvel, like, come on, man. This was a golden goose. It just died. It started dying under his watch, and then it really has gotten just worse in the year that he's been back. I know he can't relaunch new films and stuff like that, but that quickly, but still.
Yeah, but a lot of this stuff, you have to remember, like, Chapek was only at the reins by himself for all of like 11 months. You know, like, so much of what we try and blame on Chapek, sorry, Iger was just there just as much. Yep. What's interesting and what he's getting a lot of slack on is, he's done in about a 10-day period. Not only did he do this interview, but he did an all cast member or Disney employee town hall, and he had to do an earnings call because of It's a publicly traded company. And in each of these, he outlines like what is the number one priority of Disney? Like what are the top things we're working on? And more or less in each one, he gives a very different answer. One's, streaming, one's parks, one's like parks and studios. The other's kind of like park studios. Oh, and streaming. And then in this one, like he goes all off on Marvel, like that's the reason why all of this is at. And so it's getting a lot of negative press of just kind of like, do you even know like what you're aiming for? Do you even know like what to prioritize here? Which, if you haven't seen, has also caused a lot of the activist investors are back, and they're back stronger than before. They have a stronger sharehold. I mean, they still have minuscule amount compared to others, but they're making a noise.
Well, they brought back one thing recently that they had been asking for, which is dividends. They're now doing dividends again. That was a big part of the
initial reasoning.
Yep. So you're seeing, and even they're asked. They said, "Hey, pull back on the reins," which that's things that they have. Things that they've said is they're going to start trying to go deeper into quality over quantity. We'll see if it actually happens and how long that process takes, if they can even do any of that before. Is it 2026 when he said he would step down? Like he has reiterated, I will not go past 2026. I will have a successor by then.
Yeah, he's and that was brought up in this interview that we're talking about as well. And he seemed pretty adamant that 2 years and he's done, he's out. So it'll be interesting to see how that all goes down. I do have to say, just within the past few months, he's had a couple. I put in the notes there is like, is Iger getting just as bad as Chapek in some of these gaffes?
Yeah.
Most famously, he said the one during the writer and actor strike. I don't know. To me, it's just very interesting. No matter which side of this you agree with or don't agree with the writers and the actors, or even kind of Elon Musk and the free speech purist, any way that you kind of fall on that. I do find it very interesting that Bob Iger keeps putting himself out there as such an easy punching bag. Yeah. Like these guys don't, they don't need to swing far, but you're stepping just that bit closer to make it easier on them. He's here now in a 6-month period, stepped up for a few easy punches, and you're going, this can't be good for Disney. Like this is just not. I don't know how this is any better than the gaffes that Chapek stepped into on multiple occasions.
Yeah, I don't know what their next step is going to be, and I don't even think they know what it's going to be, because their momentum has completely cratered from what it was in 2019. Like it's done. They're going to have to work really hard to get it back.
And we saw all this, right? The shuffling. I think in our last episode, we were talking a little bit about the shuffling of release schedules and when different things are coming out. You can definitely see them trying to figure out, okay, what is this market now? Like, how are we going to handle this? What are we going to do? And I think overall, we are going to see less, which I think for a time being, I'm okay with. Like, do some soul searching, figure out the type of movies. I've been reading some things about Wish. I'm going to hold off until more of the story comes out, more of the story develops. But there's been some things, some animators are starting to come out and tell their story. And apparently the making of Wish was not a pleasant experience, to say the least. But like I've said, I've only read from one source on that. But there's apparently more to come in the months ahead. So as that story just kind of develops more, I'll send it your way. But so far I've only found like one source on it. So it's like, I don't know if I fully believe you on all of this, but even if 25% of what you're saying is true, like, this doesn't sound good. Just to tease you there a little bit.
Just to tease us. Well, Eddie, that's it for our Disney news and our review of Song of the South. But before we go, Eddie, I hope you and the family have a good week.
I hope so too. We are gearing up for Christmas. This will be our first Christmas ever, just the five of us. Nobody's coming down to visit with us or anything. So we're like, all right, let's try some new things. What do we do with our hands? What do I do with my hands? What do I do here? Where do we go? So Sarah and I are having fun just trying to think of fun little things to do and whatnot. So
what's the different way what's the unique way that Costa Ricans celebrate Christmas, other than the fact that it's a lot nicer
the big celebration is on Christmas Eve. That evening is when you gather with all of your family, and that's when you do presents and everything like that. So Christmas Eve is the big moment of celebration, and then everybody is on breaks and whatnot. So most people go out to the beach or something like that, enjoy the vacation time. So yeah, you only live at any one time, you're only like 2-3 hours away from a beach. So it's like, why not? Let's all go to the beach. It's weird. 85 degrees at Christmas. I don't know if I'm going to like this.
Something wrong with that. There's been some really warm ones here in Tennessee too. I remember a couple years ago that it was like 70 degrees Christmas Day. And honestly, as cold as it's been the past couple of days, I kind of wouldn't mind that.
I went like cold and snowy for Christmas, and then we can move on. Then I'm good. I'm like, okay, we had that season. Let's move in spring. With that, you have gotten your weekly dose of some Disney nostalgia.
Be sure to subscribe to Honey, We Made a Disney Podcast, wherever you listen to your other favorite podcasts, and give us a look on YouTube as well when I remember to upload the videos to there as well.
And while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review or like and share with your best friend.
You can also check us out at honeywemade.com, where you can see all our nostalgic reviews of Disney movies.
Tune in next week as we review the adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Thank you for listening, and remember, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.